Here's our pinch pot that we just made, and what I'm going to do now is start forming it to the shape that I want it to be. And I have this paddle tool here that I'm going to use to pat it. My students like to call it spanking the clay, but all you're going to do is go around and pat it and form it into the shape that you want. First thing I'm going to do is turn my piece over. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see this. And I'm going to take the paddle and start forming it into the shape that I want. And I'm not hitting the clay real hard, but I want to get a nice rounded shape on the bottom. So I'm just going to go around, turn the banding wheel as I tap the clay. Sometimes I don't turn it and I just use the paddle going around, forming it into a rounded bottom. Does your bowl or pinch pot need to be rounded? No, it doesn't have to be. It can be whatever shape you want it to be. So now here we have a more of a rounded bottom. Okay, and I'm pretty satisfied with that. So the next thing I am going to do is start smoothing out the clay. And the tool that I like best for that is one of these metal ribs. It's personal preference. Some people like to use these plastic ribs. They come in different hardness and softness. It's up to you. I just like to make sure my rib is clean. And when I do this, I don't place the rib with the edge touching the clay. I kind of have the clay touching right in here, and I smooth it out. And you can get a nice, neat, clean finish on your piece. It will shine it up. It'll look real shiny when you do it. This helps take out all the fingerprints, bumps, and you're just going to have to spend some time taking it and doing it. If you don't spend the time, it's not going to look nice. That's one thing that makes a person in ceramics average, good, or really good, is the amount of time that you spend on your piece, not trying to rush through it. If you rush through it, it's going to look like you did. You can see one thing. You'll notice that I am holding my piece with my other hand as I smooth out the clay. That way I don't crush it as I'm working. Now I have the outside pretty much smoothed out. When I'm totally finished, I'll take a slightly damp sponge and clean up the rest of the way. Now, since this is a piece that you can see on the inside, you are going to have to smooth out the inside also. For this, I like this rubber rib a little bit better. And you're going to take it and smooth out all your fingerprints as best as possible. The reason for that is because you'll be able to see in your piece. The outside should just be the same as your inside, especially since people are going to be seeing inside of it. And that is part of craftsmanship, taking your time, cleaning up your piece, making sure it's nice and neat. So inside of this is pretty well smoothed out. I will also take a sponge to it and clean up the inside a little bit. Now my sponge, and there's very little water in it, and I am just going to start smoothing out all the imperfections with the sponge. You really don't want a lot of water because all that's going to do is make your clay really soft, and we're not here to make the clay soft at this point. We are just using the sponge to clean up the edges and make them look nice and neat. If you need a little more water, dip it in, wring it out. Try to get all those imperfections out, because when you go to glaze your piece, all those imperfections will show up. So you want to clean it up as nice as possible. I'm going to turn it over, set it down, bring up my sponge a little more, and I am going just to clean it up. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll put a foot on the bottom so that it can stand and not roll over, since we have a rounded bottom. Okay, my piece is all cleaned up. The next thing we'll do is I'll show you how to put a foot on the bottom so that your piece doesn't roll over. I'll show you a couple different ways you can do this with a single coil, 3 legs. I wouldn't recommend 4 because if you don't have them at the right angle or the right size, your piece will wobble. Okay, so I'll be showing you that next.